Welcome to Origins 2.0. In this video I want to dive into all of the exciting new developments in the world of Call of Duty Zombies. In particular, we're going to explore the visual, thematic and gameplay connections between Black Ops 6 Zombies' newest map, The Tomb, and Origins, the finale map from Black Ops 2 Zombies mode. For a long time, fans have speculated that The Tomb could be an Origins reimagining or a spiritual successor, and now that it's finally here, it looks like my theory is spot on. I think this has kind of warped people's expectations for the map, as it's a much smaller and less grandiose map than Origins is, and I think this warped reality is leading to some of the extensive criticism that the map has been receiving. It's definitely a very fun survival map, but obviously nowhere near on the sheer scale of Origins, which took the COD Zombies formula and shook it to its core, still being renowned as one of the fan favourite maps, reinventing the mode so much so in a way that's still so important as to how Treyarch make zombies today. But regardless, in this video I want to break down as many of the connections to Origins that I could personally find and explain them, similar to the video that I recently made, and all of the classic Ether story connections in the Dark Ether story, or all of the Chaos story connections in the Dark Ether story. One of the first things you notice when comparing Origins and The Tomb is their shared setting. Both maps are set in dig sites in France, obviously. In Origins, we fought amidst recently unearthed ancient ruins upon a World War I battlefield, and now The Tomb follows that very same tradition by taking us to yet another mysterious excavation site. This isn't just a coincidence, it's a deliberate choice. The French dig site setting ties both maps together and creates an immediate sense of continuity between the two games. In both maps, you are exploring relics of a bygone era, uncovering ancient mysteries and battling undead horrors in a historical context. The environment itself is a character, and its ties to history and legend are what makes these maps so immersive. Both locations are where ancient Templar knights fought long ago. In The Tomb, we even see the reference to Archibald's initial dig date being 1908, which is close to the time frame in Origins of 1917. This means that when both dig sites originally began to uncover artifacts in their ancient French temples, the time period is actually quite close, despite how technologically different the Chaos story and Origins may feel at times. But let's talk visuals and level design. If you've played Origins, you will remember the most infamous place, the Crazy Place. That area with the massive pillars and mysterious architecture that felt like stepping into another world. And the environment around you would constantly be changing. The Tomb brings back a similar vibe with its temple and deep excavation area. And of course, the Crazy Place was where Maxis bonded with electricity itself, as the circular patterns throughout this map and Origins seem to be an ancient form of writing that channels power, allowing for such things as teleporters. And if you look in the crevices between this supposed new Crazy Place, you even see storm clouds brimming with electricity, almost waiting for someone to fall in like a mimic. When you look at both maps, you see that the layouts are intentionally similar. The Tomb's deep excavation mirrors the layout of Origins' catacombs, complete with scattered pillars and an underground area that exudes mystery. There's even a distinctive hole in the top middle of the map that looks suspiciously like a gateway to Agartha, a nod to Origins' main quest ending, where the gateway to Agartha exists in the ceiling above, and of course the Maxis drone gets thrown up there. Digging into this more, no pun intended, these shafts of light you can see filtering in from above that bathe the cavernous temple in a glow that's almost magical may actually be just that. The Call of Duty blog even describes this as faint shafts of what appears to be sunlight entering from a natural space in the rock above. But why call it what appears to be sunlight? That phrase suggests that there might be something supernatural about that light, something that isn't entirely natural. Could it be that this light, in a nod to Origins' gateway in the same location, be giving us some sort of light power via a gateway? I mean, we just had the light sword on Citadel des Morts just down the street. It makes sense that this is one type of ether power. But to where? There is no Agartha now as far as we can tell, so it's hard to say. There is no dimension that lies above reality. So what would be charging us from above. Another visual tie-in is the return of the Crazy Place pillars. The architectural design shows that the developers were not only inspired by Origins, but intentionally built on its legacy. We see the return of the circular pattern famous for being on the stones in Origins. In prior videos, which I will link on screen and in the description, I go into more detail about what these actually are. In essence, they are current paths for magical energies, turning stones into magical machines. Think the soldering paths on a motherboard, but for magic and stone. Hold on to this, we will return to it later. But for now, just know that this is also the very place where the gateway to the Dark Ether Nexus opens up, similar to the ones that would open back and forth to the Crazy Place in Origins. Now, let's move on to one of the most intriguing gameplay connections, and the most obvious one, the Ice Staff, or the Staff of Ice, whatever way you put it.
Not today.
In the tomb, you have the chance to build something on a special rock wall that looks very familiar to anyone who's spent time in Origins. In Origins, each of the 4 staff pedestals have a unique symbol representing its corresponding elemental staff, and the Ice Staff's pedestal featured a circle, within a circle, etc. When you check out the Ice Staff building stones in the tomb, you will notice that they have the same symbol and a very similar texture. This isn't just a simple design choice, it's a direct link to Origins. In the tomb's narrative, the Ice Staff is known by Archibald, who mentions hearing of it in his legends.
No, couldn't be. Yes, it blasted well is. This chap's is the fabled Staff of Ice. Well, the sticky bit at any rate. Be a good egg, Potts. Stash it somewhere safe, there's a good fellow.
To kill, not think.
Doth mine eyes deceive? Is that the other piece of the Staff of Ice? By Jove, it is! Potts, you know what this means? It means that unless you remember to pack some jolly old acetylene, we might be bloody well stuffed. Dog my cats, it's more of those bitey blighters. Stand fast, lads! Here they come! What the? They're after the Staff of Ice! To arms! To arms! Extinguish the flames, froze the crystals.
Implying that it's not just a random piece of equipment, it's an artifact steeped in historical lore and part of a much larger conflict in the Dark Ether's history. I've been seeing so many comments saying Trek just brought back the Ice Staff for no narrative reason, merely just for nostalgia. But that isn't the case. There is lore and inklings you can make from the little Trek provided to us on the map, as if they're begging for us to look further into it, because this is just one small piece to a much larger puzzle that I will be trying to unpack. Furthermore, the X91 Ice Pike, the skin for it you unlock for completing the quest, is the Project Janus replica of said Ice Staff. And it states that the Ice Staff has unknown origins, indicating this truly is the same Ice Staff from all the way back in the Ether storyline, even though it functions slightly differently in gameplay and looks. And it has only gone on to accrue even more legend in the millions, possibly billions of years since the events of the Ether storyline for objects in the Dark Ether. But Archibald knowing it exists as well means something very important. It exists now in a context that a historian in his time in this new universe would know it as. There has to be a greater legend involving the Ice Staff in this new world, this rebooted timeline. And what other legend would this be than the very Great War itself? Yes, that is right. This connection even hints at a deeper narrative. We have speculated in prior videos that this might involve the Bastard Sons of the Owl, a group that could be this universe's version of the Primus and Ultimus crews. In Origins, we saw the beginnings of a conflict that would eventually lead to a grand narrative involving these characters. And it seems like the Tomb might be exploring that very same storyline in a new way. There's a possibility that, in this new timeline, the legendary Great War in the Dark Ether history might have its own version of that iconic conflict. One with an unknown enemy we have yet to face, potentially the Shadowsmiths. If we look at the wall paintings and etchings and murals throughout the Tomb, there are depictions of battles, conflicts between factions, and now the Apothecans and Keepers are supposedly banished. They could be new, different, changed or corrupted factions. But I won't get too deep into that for now, as I am planning a future video on the Second Great War coming soon. Although, can we really call it the Second Great War when a near infinite have already happened in that old Etherverse? But I digress. A new Great War may be upon us, or have already happened. The staff also has some interesting, if minute, changes worth noting. We see the new symbols on the spikes at the end, and at this time don't have much in terms of what they could mean or why they are there now. We can likely surmise that the Ice Staff now works with Dark Ether magic rather than Element 115 as before, suggesting these runes may be part of the rune magic required to make it work. Even Prima Materia could be a part of its power. We also see its inspect animation now being quite similar, if not the same, to the animation of the Staff of Ra. This is interesting, as later in the map we learn that Cortifex had been involved with the ancient Egyptians and the artifact of Ra, meaning it's not out of the realm of possibility that this connection suggests both these artifacts come, or at least have somewhat of a connection to, none other than Cortifex himself. And could there be the other three staffs out there as well? If so, could we potentially wield them again in a Great War? Was Cortifex involved in the Great War? So many questions arise from this, and like I say, I'll try and tackle them soon in a future video. But on the topic of Origins, there's also another interesting theory that the Ice Staff building stones in the tomb might be connected to the old Origins mound. In Origins, we never saw the true top of the mound because it was hidden by a metal platform that was moved to hold the Pack-a-Punch machine. Could it be that the Ice Staff building stones are actually the remnants of that ancient mound? Given the circular base being of similar diameter to the space in the mound center where the Pack-a-Punch now sits in Origins, it's entirely possible that this is the case, and the Dark Ether has preserved the original focal point at the mound's summit. Speaking of the summit, we see very similar shapes in the Origins mound and the Dark Ether Nexus's spikes. These large curved spires of the Dark Ether obsidian seem to match locationally with the spikes around the mound on Origins, only slightly larger in scale. And where the Origins spikes send their energy through the metal ring in the middle, we instead see the energy sent into a large crystal meteorite that converts into light colors for the gateway to the Sentinel artifact. Could it be that those large ropes and machine parts that hold together the spires in Origins, created by Group 935, were set up that way to mimic this structure in the Dark Ether without knowing it? These purple spires can too be seen in the background of the Mr. Peaks Gobblegum animation, suggesting that they are either in more places in the Dark Ether than just this, or that the Mr. Peaks video is relatively nearby to the Nexus. But honestly, it looks to be the very same place. If you look at these supposed trees, upon closer inspection, they are in fact giant mushrooms, just like the giant shrooms within the Nexus. But the thing is, these spires are not only seen on the Origins Pack-a-Punch mound and in this Dark Ether Nexus, they were also seen long ago in none other than the Great War itself. We've had very little depictions of the Great War in-game, but one of which, of course, is the ending of Revelations, the repetition of the cycle, when we see Primus wielding the staffs above in a call to arms of victory. If you peer into the background, you can see these very same spires that we see in the Dark Ether Nexus. However, they do not look to be purple like these ones today, so this could mean the ones we see in the Dark Ether Nexus could even be the exact same ones that we can see in the background of the Great War. This could imply that Primus and all the Keepers actually built these as an ancient source for power, and then come Origins when the cycle is repeating and Primus are essentially reincarnated, Group 935, upon studying the ancient ruins, may have discovered material on these ancient spires and attempted to recreate them with Element 115 like we see on the Pack-a-Punch mound. We know as well that Primus Richtofen, when the cycle was broken, managed to find a teleporter and send himself to Alcatraz to take his other self's blood. But we've never understood where he found this teleporter. Could it even be that the Spires allowed one to be created, channeling the energy of the circular symbols? What's more is that on the Shadows of Evil mural that you wall run against that depicts the Great War, you can see these very same spires in the background. However, they are atop what looks to be a temple, a mound. We don't see this temple in the background of the Revelations ending because it's a bit blurry, but there could have been a temple underneath. Potentially that very same temple is underneath the Origins mound, and potentially underneath the Dark Ether Nexus it's just been covered up by dirt. But obviously we're in the Dark Ether now, whereas the Great War literally took place in the real world. Could it be that when all of the old multiverse was sent into the Dark Ether, what we now see in the Dark Ether Nexus is that after it got sent in there, potentially 115 just then turned into these purple Ethereum structures. This is all very interesting and harps back on the idea that a new Great War could have occurred, but maybe this time it transcended between the dimensions. Whereas in the Ether, the Apothecans were summoned out of the Dark Ether and attempted to consume many worlds from within the regular Ether realms, the battling could have taken place between humanity on both sides of the Veil. As even the weakened Veil here, the place of mass death and casualty in the tomb, is described as leaking into the world for thousands of years, potentially thousands since this potential new Great War. And now we are back in France where these very same spires can be seen. We might as well still be in the cycle. Moving swiftly along, music is one of the most clever ways the developers tie Origins and the Tomb together. Instead of introducing only entirely new tracks, the Tomb features several songs that players will immediately recognize from the Origins soundtrack. These tracks are queued up at key moments as you explore the map and work through its quest, creating subconscious connections for anyone who's experienced Origins before. What's particularly neat is that the returning tracks in the Tomb aren't just similar, they are very nearly the same tracks as those in the Origins OST. However, now they've just been reinvigorated, remixed and remastered, complete with the same names with these upgraded mixes. So the songs are the same, but they've been given new and updated clarity with the better technology. For instance, you will encounter pieces like Ether, the Crypt, Death Bell, and One Way Out throughout the map. Each time one of these tracks plays, it reinforces that nostalgic tie to Origins and serves as a reminder of the interesting ties between the maps as you play. These remakes, these revisitings, have been extremely fun for Brian Chewy to work on. An especially intriguing detail to mention is one with the track Ether. In Origins, Ether was hidden behind a side quest, a secret that rewarded players with its unique melody only after they had uncovered it years later. Although Ether appears on the OST for the Tomb, it has yet to be heard anywhere on the map. This omission hints that there might be an unfound side Easter egg in order to unlock this iconic track, which, if by the time I've recorded this video it's found, I'll be sure to let you know, and when it is I'll link it in the description. On Origins, this side Easter egg was found many years after, and had the obscure steps of pressing interact on the two number 1s of Generator 1 and one of the number 5s of Generator 5. Perhaps there is a hidden replacer to this 115 step on the map somewhere that will activate this new mix of Ether. This intentional reuse of musical cues isn't just about nostalgia, it's about crafting a deeper, interconnected experience, similar to how Citadel Day More reuses Alistair's theme.
That is more than I could get from him all week.
Listen closely. Oculus tools.
Every time a familiar track plays, it nudges players to recall their past experiences on Origins and subtly makes the maps more similar in your mind subconsciously as you play. The most noticeable being on Revelations, where as you go through each of the different remade portions, their irrespective themes will play. Another striking similarity between Origins and the Tomb is the presence of the 4 different coloured gateways. In the Tomb you'll find red, blue, yellow and green gateways placed in key locations. 1 at spawn, 1 in each of the 2 tunnels and 1 in the deep excavation area. This design mirrors the 4 coloured gateways found in Origins, which while slightly different in colour, being red, blue, yellow and purple, are still placed at 4 cardinal directions around the central point of the mound within the Dark Ether Nexus. An additional interesting piece relating to this is that this would make the Dark Ether Nexus more similar to the overworld of Origins, and the overworld of the Tomb, specifically the Neolithic Temple, more similar to the Crazy Place. Another interesting inverse, as we've seen the Dark Ether story do many times before. The Nexus seems to even feature the trenches from Origins. In Origins, the gateways weren't just decorative elements. They served as a visual representation of the power of the staffs and the elemental forces they represented. By including a 4 colour scheme in the Tomb, the developers are drawing a direct line between the 2 maps intentionally, with the 4 colours being tied to different elemental enemy types that you have to do as one of the steps in the main quest, as you collect their souls, to re-unlock those rifts that were once closed off to get back to the Dark Ether Nexus. At their respective cores, both Origins and the Tomb are about unearthing the secrets of the past. They invite players to explore ancient ruins, uncover legendary artifacts, and piece together the story of a long-forgotten conflict that is important setup for the future of the story. The use of the dig sites in France, the architectural design, and the musical cues all work together to create an atmosphere of mystery and history. Speaking of an atmosphere of history, there's a small side Easter egg in the map where you can dig up green gems from the dig sites if you have depth perception and take them to a statue. Here you can offer them to the ancient, giving the stone statue your gems in exchange for a ray gun. He also drops an intel, Pots and Pans Part 4, where in this intel, Archibald 2 also refers to them as the ancients. The large statue of a bearded man being referred to as an ancient is interesting because that word was also used in regards to the big statues / medieval versions of Primus that featured in Origins. The staffs were even known as the staffs of the ancients. Could this be an intentional allusion to the ancients of Origins, and if so, is this one of the original characters in the past? Perhaps an old man version of one of the bastard sons, if our prior theory on them was indeed correct. Regardless of whether or not new versions of the original characters fought in this potential new Great War, the parallels to the ancients are definitely there. Now, in Origins, the narrative was built around the discovery of ancient technology and the battle against forces that spanned both time and space. The Tomb carries the same theme forward. The presence of legendary artifacts like the Ice Staff, which might be tied to events and characters from a forgotten era, suggests that the battle in the Dark Ether is far from over. It also raises questions about how history is being rewritten in this new timeline. Consider the possibility that the events of the Tomb are actually a reinterpretation of the conflicts we saw in Origins. The map might be hinting that there was once a great war, a massive struggle between different factions in the Dark Ether, and that the legendary staffs were key elements in that conflict. The return of familiar symbols and the careful reuse of visual and musical motifs all point to a deliberate effort to reframe the history of the Ether and Dark Ether. This reimagining of history is something that has excited fans for years. Many have speculated that the events in the Tomb are not merely just a callback to Origins, but a deepening of its lore, a way to bridge the gap between the past and present conflicts. In doing so, the map offers new mysteries to unravel while paying homage to the legacy of one of the most beloved zombies maps of all time. Beyond the obvious visual and thematic ties, there are gameplay elements in the Tomb that echo those of Origins. One striking feature making a return is the presence of dig sites. Just as in Origins, these dig sites scattered throughout the map allow you to uncover valuable loot, and just as in Origins, you need collectible shovels to get that loot. This mechanic was first introduced in Origins and now makes a regular comeback, being featured commonly throughout Black Ops 6 Zombies, and now makes another appearance in the tomb, such as on Terminus, urging players to explore every nook and cranny in search of secrets and rewards. Considering the map is about a dig site, this is one map you definitely couldn't miss out having dig spots. When we look at the evolution of the Zombies narrative, one thing becomes clear. Timing is everything. The last Origins map arrived just before the story exploded in scope, introducing a giant multiverse filled with some of the most iconic and interesting elements the series has ever seen. That map set the stage for a narrative shift, where the once simple struggle against the undead expanded into an intricate saga spanning multiple realities. Now, with the tomb and the ongoing developments in the Dark Ether storyline, we have to ask, could we be on the verge of a similar explosion in narrative scope? The clues are starting to line up. Whilst yes, I think people got the wrong idea in terms of the scale of the map due to it being a thematic sequel to Origins, I think gameplay wise we're about to see a massive shift, despite the fact that it's not so immediate just yet. The map, generally speaking, is underwhelming storyline wise, and I can understand that criticism of the map, and I am in agreement, but I do think the seeds are there for something much bigger to come. It's just unfortunate that the map doesn't have much grandiose to offer right now in the present, but I think without it, Treyarch can do what they are probably going to do down the line. The careful homages to Origins in the tomb, whether through shared visuals, gameplay mechanics, or thematic elements, aren't just nostalgic callbacks. They could very well be laying the groundwork for a new chapter in the zombie saga, one that might echo the grand multiverse reveal we saw begin back in Origins. Adding to the intrigue, recent leaks for Call of Duty 2025 suggest that we are on the precipice of the return of the original characters. According to these leaks, what is likely the villain from the end of Modern Warfare Zombies is poised to make a comeback, and their goal is nothing short of restoring the multiverse, which I very well think could be one and the same as the Shadowsmiths. Which is why I suggested earlier, could they have even been who played a role in some sort of new Great War that happened centuries ago in the tomb's history? This revelation raises a fascinating possibility. Just as Origins hinted at a larger, interconnected universe, the Dark Ether story might be preparing to take a similar leap. Could we soon see the Dark Ether narrative expand into a full-blown multiverse saga, complete with the return of familiar heroes and villains? As we consider all of these elements, the return of visual and gameplay motifs from Origins, the reappearance of iconic musical cues, and now the hints of a multiverse being restored, we are left with a thrilling question. Is the Dark Ether story about to mirror the expansive, interconnected narrative that transformed Origins and the Ether story into a multiversal saga? Only time will tell, but if the leaks are to be believed, that very well may be the case. Alternative realities are lovely, and we are limited to just one. We could be in for one of the most ambitious zombie storytelling journeys in the history of Call of Duty Zombies to date, and that's a big task. I believe this is a pivotal moment. The foundations laid by Origins have not only defined a generation of zombies maps, but have also set a benchmark for narrative ambition. With the tomb serving as a bridge between the old and the new, it feels like we are standing on the edge of a major shift, a reimagining of the storyline that could see the return of beloved characters and the introduction of even more mind-bending lore. It's an exciting time to be a Zombies fan, and I hope you are excited for what is to come. And I can't wait to see how this all unfolds and begin to explore and explain it with you. So join me and embark on a thrilling adventure from now until Black Ops 7 in COD 2025. And on that note, thank you for watching the video. Make sure to subscribe if you're not here for the latest and greatest Call of Duty news and information. So anyways, thank you for watching, and bye.